So, who determines that all these behaviors are wrong? Drug use, burning paper money, cheating, missing your curfew, ill-treat animals. Who make the rules? Who determine that all these behaviors are wrong? Drug use, burning cash, cheating, missing your curfew, and being mean to animals. In some places, there are laws for that. So who made the rules? Who determines all these behaviors are wrong? Society. Who is part of society? Can we be more specific? Who is part of society? Who determines whether you break your curfew or not when you were a kid? Who determined whether you broke your curfew or not? Who made those rules? Parents. So parents are members of society. Somebody has to make those rules. Maybe teachers, school administrators make the rules that cheating and plagiarism is wrong. And your government made the rules that burning cash is wrong. It's illegal, it's wrong. It's a law in your country, not in another country. Do you know that? It's illegal to burn cash in the US. Do you know that? My ex-student told me that. I don't even know that. And in China, I heard, now the China economy has boomed, has developed recently. And because of that, because private enterprise are encouraged, private businesses. So there are many local big bosses in China. And wow, these folks, they want to show off their wealth. They purposely wear their branded stuff, branded jackets, branded blazers, branded suits, with the tag showing outwardly for people on the streets, for people in public places to see. And sometimes when they go to a restaurant, if the service is slow or not good, you know what they do? They take out a stack of cash, the yuan, the Chinese currency. They will take out a lighter. They will burn that stack of cash in front of the other customer, in front of the waiter and waitress, just to prove that I am filthy rich and you are not giving me the service I deserve. So apparently, maybe it could be legal to burn cash in China. So as you can see, the conceptualization, the definition of crime and deviant is what? Socially constructed. It depends on who made the rules. And in some countries, it's okay to mistreat animals. In your country, they may not be a rules, but there are many non-profit support groups. If they see that, they may make a lot of noise on the social media, on TV, and on other avenues. And there's a rule or there's a law that says that drug use is illegal. Marijuana may be legal for certain health conditions, but other types of drug use are still illegal. Maybe in some countries, there's no such rules. Sometimes people use marijuana for treatment. So as we can see, the concept of crime and deviance is what? Socially constructed. Are you clear? So if you turn to, I don't know what page.
162.
162. Deviance is the violation of norms. When we violate a societal norms, a cultural norms, we are considered right, deviance. Deviance comes from the word right, deviate, to go off track from the expected cultural or social norms. So deviance can be considered anything alien to society. And this is uploaded on week 7 folder on Blackboard. So you may not need to take notes if you don't want to. So when one considers any culture, beliefs, value system, ideals, standards that's against what people normally do in a given society. We consider those behaviors, those acts, deviance, or sometimes crime. Crime is one aspect of deviance. Crime is a subset of deviant. If you had a math course, you know what subset means, right? Crime is like a part of deviance. So, your book gives the definition of crime. When we talk about crime, we mean violation of formally enacted laws. Or the definition provided by your book says what? Violation of norms written into law. When norms are written into law, they become what? Legal. It has some legality involved. So, deviance is just violating any norm. The norm may or may not be legal, but crime is violation of a law. Know the distinction. I have a matching question on your test. Know the distinction between crime and deviance. So crime can be any illegal act. And crime can be social norm violations with legal implications. Maybe you run over a red light, it caused an accident. That's crime. That's also a social norm violation. And Logan gave me a very good example about red tape on Wednesday. But this example can also be applied to crime. You go to buy liquor and you say that you met the age requirement, you forgot your ID. That's crime. That's also deviant. It's both. Because usually when we go to buy liquor, they want to see our IDs, right? So when we forgot our ID, we showed up with a bottle of liquor to pay. We are not allowed to buy them because it's not only a social norm violation, but it's also illegal. So crime is a subset of deviant. Are you clear? And crime is always punishable. Deviance may or may not be punishable. If you wear fluorescent color to funerals, it's deviant. It's going off track. It's deviating from what people normally do. People may frown at you. They may give you funny look, but it's not punishable. Wearing red to funerals. Or slamming the door to the person behind you. It's against a folkway. Folkway is a kind of norm, more informal norm. But it's not illegal. It's being rude. You slam the door to the people behind you, right behind you. Usually we don't do that. If that person is right behind us, that's considered deviant in many countries, many societies. But that's not criminal. Maybe that person, if he or she gets hurt terribly, that can have legal implications. If that person is not hurt, it's deviant but it's not criminal. Can you distinguish between crime and deviant? You have 2 questions on your test. I'm not kidding you. So, norm is what's normal. It comes from the word normal. Anything, any action, any behaviors that are considered normal parts of society, we call that a norm. Showing your ID to buy liquor, wearing bright colors for Chinese New Year is a norm. It's expected and is considered appropriate. Wearing gloomy colors to funerals, wearing red and green during Christmas is considered a norm in your country. It's considered somewhat appropriate. But the norms also depends on the context, and we will illustrate that later. So, social norm violations can happen in many ways. It can be minor, like a misbehavior, running over a stop sign. People don't get hurt. It can be a crime or offense. Running over a red light, speeding over a red light, and killing somebody. Wow, that's considered a crime and offense. It's a more serious social norm violation. And if the person is usually below 21 or 18, if the person do some graffiti, vandalism, that's considered delinquency. It's only specific to a certain age group, delinquency. And maybe pulling your neighbor's dog hair out, that's considered a misdemeanor, a minor form of crime. Sometimes it can be a crime if your neighbor sues you. Or it's a minor form of social norm violation, being mean to your neighbor's dog, pulling the hair out of your neighbor's dog. Those are misdemeanors. And the last one is a felony. It's a heavy crime. It's a serious form of social norm violation. Capital murder, burglary, you name it. Identity theft, data breach. Many serious forms of blue collar and white collar crimes, we consider them felonies. So, do all groups benefit equally from norms? Or certain norms are going to benefit certain people in a given society and it's going to hurt another group of people? Do people benefit equally from norms? One hint. Let's picture the South under the Jim Crow law that time. During the 60s or prior to that, Jim Crow law was the norm, the normal way of life in Southern America. Do everybody who live in the South during that time period benefit equally under the Jim Crow law? So no, not every groups benefit equally from norms. And the apartheid system, am I saying that right? Apartheid could be another example. Not everybody who live under the apartheid system benefit equally from the norms associated with the apartheid system. What is this? What is this? Something very important happened in Salem, Massachusetts, right, in your history, hundreds of years ago. What is this? What incident happened in Salem? Witches' trial. So, who was considered the deviants during that time period? Who was considered the deviants or criminals during that time period? The witches' trial. If you try to understand this phenomena from a sociological perspective, who was considered deviant? Who was hung? Who was hung? The women who were being, I would say, framed, quote unquote, as witches. Do you know for sure whether they are witches or they were witches? Maybe not. So those women who were being framed were considered deviant during that time, hundreds of years ago in Salem, Massachusetts. Massachusetts, right? And who is considered normal during that society in Salem? The church-going people. Am I right? Are we right? I think from what I read, Salem was governed by the Puritans, ministers. So, from what I read, Salem, correct me if I'm wrong, people were expected to go to church during those days. But these women were different. So, they were considered going off track, deviating from societal norms during that time period. They were considered the deviants, I'm sorry. So if we have witches' trial in our today's society, who would be the deviants? Would the women or anybody who practice witchcraft still consider deviants in our 21st century society? if this incident happened recently, who would be the deviants? Is witchcraft illegal in your country? I'm not sure. People may think it's a bit weird, quote unquote, but it may not be illegal in many parts of your country, depending on your city law, state law, or federal law, who knows. And would you tolerate people who practice witchcraft? Americans or anybody? Would you tolerate people who practice witchcraft? Are you okay? No? Yes? Or would you report them? Would you call 911 and report them? Would you tolerate people who practice witchcraft? Maybe. So if this happens recently, maybe those people, women or men, who practice witchcraft may not be considered deviants. They may not be considered going off track in our today's society. They may be considered one of the subculture. Do you still remember the meaning of subculture? If not, I'm going to add that question to your midterm. And do people still practice public hanging today? So maybe some people in today's society may find that those ministers are the deviants today. Because people don't do public hanging today in most countries, in most societies. So those ministers may be considered the deviants going off track, doing something against the norm. So as you can see, the definition of what crime and deviance can change over time and context. This is an example of the social construction of reality. If this happens recently, wow, the definition, who we label as criminals or deviants may change. Who we label as the normal people may change. If this incident happens recently, a few days ago. This is Mary Bishop, right? I think she was hung. She was one of the prominent figures, one of the famous people who was being framed. I think she was Mary Bishop. And according to history books, correct me if I'm wrong, she was strong-willed, independent. Was that how the women behaved in those times? Were women strong-willed and independent hundreds of years ago in Salem? Maybe not. So she was considered deviant, going off track. And she had conflict with her husband. Was that what women normally do, having conflict with husbands? Maybe not those times. Another example of how she went off track. Oh, she had multiple marriages. Was that the norm hundreds of years ago in Salem? Maybe not. It was governed by Puritans. So, many of the women who were framed, maybe they had somewhat similar lifestyles as her. Even if they did not have multiple marriages, but they were somewhat strong-willed, independent. It may not be acceptable in those societies. Because of that, those women who were being framed as witches were considered deviants hundreds of years ago. So if this happens recently, who gives a damn? This is our daily life. Sometimes if we don't get along with our spouse or partners, we split. Who gives a damn? And it's okay to be independent and strong-willed. It's a positive trait to some people in today's society. And in those times in Salem, what happened? The community was plagued by smallpox. It wasn't a stable community. And they were constantly being attacked by Indians. It wasn't safe either. Not stable, not safe. And the church leadership were just the beginning. It hasn't solidified their influence and power. They were new immigrants. And Salem was plagued by all kinds of natural disasters. So, this is how sociologists view these historical incidents. Because, and it's not my intention to offend anybody here, the church wants to solidify their leadership position. It wasn't very stable. That could be part of the reason why some of these women who they thought practiced witchcraft, they label them as deviants. They thought they were demon possessed. So, does deviance always lead to crime? We just talk about it. Maybe not. Yeah, if you slam the door at the person right behind you, it's not criminal. Can deviance change? Yes. We just talk about it. And are all deviant acts negative or stigmatizing? Are all deviant acts bad? So people who live under the Jim Crow law, who proposed integration back in the 50s or 60s, they were considered deviants. Were they bad people? No. And one recent incident, the NFL players, I'm sure you know, is everywhere on YouTube, on TV. So, as you can see, the social construction of reality is also manifested in that incident. Kneeling before the flag, is that deviance? Is that illegal? It's up to people's interpretation. There are so many viewpoints when you turn on your TV or you go to YouTube. So before we talk about this, what do I want? Okay, do you remember Louis Pasteur? Louis Pasteur. I think he was a physician, right, in France. Do you know how he died? And this is not Western people taught how he died, but this is what Asians were taught how he died. And I'm going to tell you this story. When Louis was a young doctor, young but accomplished, he realized a phenomenon. Mothers, they died right after giving birth because of infection, bacterial infection. Because the utensils were not sterilized, mothers died shortly after giving birth. So he wanted to fix things. And he invented the techniques of sterilization. And he proposed that to his senior colleagues. Do you think they bought that? When he proposed sterilization, it was unfamiliar back then to his senior colleagues. Do you think they gave him the red light or they mocked him? They mocked him. He tried to prove his point. He held a unsterilized utensil. He put it into his own wrist. That's how he died. That's what we were taught in Asian schools. So, deviant acts are not always negative or stigmatizing. What Louis Pasteur just demonstrated, it can lead to positive outcomes. And many, many years later, people adopt what? Sterilization in medical fields, in healthcare. So, we do this a lot, non-deviant crimes. It's illegal, but it's not considered breaking a norm. We call that non-deviant crime. We do not deviate from societal norm when we do that, but it's illegal anyway. Jaywalking. I used to do that a lot. And Wednesday, I complained about the lantern. Am I right? I was evil. I was bad. I complained about the lantern. Do you remember? So, I figure out, it's not that far to go to Comau or New China Express if I jaywalk. Oh, I'm so bad. Some things don't change. And these are all the examples of non-deviant crimes. Do you do some of that or you are good people? You college students are wealthy people, right? You college students are wealthy people, right? You are loaded with money, that's why you're in college. Yes? College students are filthy rich, am I right? You are not only filthy rich, but you are kind. So when you walk past a car right beside a parking meter, the meter expire, you put coins in the expired parking meter. That's another example of a non-deviant crime. Don't do it, even though you are loaded. More examples. You have to give examples of non-deviant crimes in your midterm. Take it seriously. And the mattress tag, it says something, do not remove, but sometimes we remove that anyway. Another example of a non-deviant crime. So sometimes, like what we just discussed, not all deviant acts are negative or stigmatizing. Some deviant acts, it may be deviant during that particular time point. When more and more people buy it, it can lead to what? Positive outcomes. We talk about Louis Pasteur. We talk about abolishing the Jim Crow law, desegregation, integration in the South. And another example would be what? Same-sex marriage, or more rights to homosexuals. And maybe pressing for more transparency in any government. Sometimes people do that through protests, through riots. Or sometimes they overthrow the whole corrupt government. It happens. Anti-corruption, anti-bribery movements. It may consider deviant when one or two people thought about it. People in that society may label them as crazy. Or ask them to stop thinking about that. You may get into trouble. But when more and more people agree to those ideas, changes may happen. It may lead to positive outcomes. So sometimes when we disregard certain norms, it can lead to what? Better norms. So some deviant acts can lead to positive outcomes. People replace the Jim Crow law with maybe integration, desegregation, equal opportunities. And I want to mention something. When I taught online in a university in Virginia, when I had my corporate job, I had an adjunct gig. And in their essay, some of my ex-students from that university, Everett University, they wrote, I am gay. They're all guys. I am in the military, but I still cannot list my lover or partner as a beneficiary in my life insurance, in my health insurance. The policy does not allow. The policy through my employer does not allow. It's not fair. I put my life in the front line like my other comrades who are heterosexual, but I am not allowed to list my partner, my spouse, as beneficiary. So maybe let's be value neutral here. Insurance company, they may need to change their policies. They may need to work with employers to modify certain aspects of their policy for these people who have different sexualities. So these are examples of positive deviant acts. Okay. So your book also talks about street crime. I don't know what page you have. Street crimes are any crimes committed on the street. Mugging, rape, and burglary. And do you believe that psychology and crime are related? Psychology and crime are related. Do you buy that? No. Do you think people who committed crime have mental health issues? Sorry? Not always, but sometimes. Yeah, I buy that. And if you turn to the next page, yeah, not always. Sometimes we may be affected by those around us. The differential association theory. I don't know what page we have.
166.
So according to the 166 differential association theory, criminal behaviors, criminal actions are learned, usually from the people we interact with. Usually from the people we are close or intimate to. Criminal behaviors are learned from those we are intimate to, according to the differential association theory. We learn simple and complicated criminal acts from people by interacting with people we are close to. And you have another theory on the next page, the control theory. It says that sometimes the inner and outer controls works against our tendency to deviate. It means that sometimes we don't act on our impulses to commit deviant or criminal acts. Sometimes we have a sense of self-control. Maybe like kids, sometimes they delay gratification if we show candy or marshmallow, something nice in front of them. They may decide to not act on their impulses. They may say, yeah, let me study hard first. And after that, I will reward myself with whatever candy or chocolate is that's in front of me. And research has found that when they do this kind of experiments to kids who act on impulses, they have a higher tendency of engaging in criminal acts. I don't know how true is that. Kids who acted on their impulses have higher tendency to engage in criminal behaviors later on in life, in their adult lives. So can you make the distinction between differential association and the control theory? And it's the same thing. Maybe in a government office, maybe one officer will show a briefcase full of cash to another officer, enticing that person to what? Take bribes. And that person may not act on his or her impulses, may choose a different path, even though it may not lead to beneficial outcomes to him or her. So, when that person chose to do that, ignore that briefcase full of cash, is a manifestation of the control theory. And on one YouTube channel I saw recently, one retired cop from Baltimore talked about why police tends to target certain groups of people in inner city, run-down neighborhoods in Baltimore. They say, because they want to make the statistics, they are under immense pressure to make the statistics. Because of that, they don't have time to get to know the people in the community, which is important for their jobs. When you get to know the people in the neighborhood, in the community, you may make decisions in a different way, but they are under pressure from their superiors to make the numbers. So sometimes they don't have a choice but to target certain people. When they see something suspicious, they're going to stop their cars because they have to meet their quota. It's too bad, so sad. So if some officers chose not to do that, it may be a manifestation of the control theory. And one last thing I'll talk about, the labeling theory. So sometimes we label people who do certain things as deviant or normal or criminal or non-criminals. The witches' trial example. Those women were labeled as deviants hundreds of years ago. But those women may not be labeled as deviants or criminal if it happens a few days ago. Those ministers may be labeled as criminals or deviants hundreds of years ago. Are you clear? Okay, see you Friday. I need the sign-up sheets.